So Bernie Sanders is the man. And the reason I say that is because he is addressing an issue head on that drives to the root of the problem in the Democratic Party. And that's a question of race versus class. So Sanders was here in Boston at Berkeley on yesterday, and he gave a speech, and I want to read a couple of portions of his speech. It was in response to a student or a woman in the audience who mentioned that she wanted to be the next Latina American congresswoman for a particular district. And in that context, he began to address her as an individual, but then he extrapolated backwards to the bigger problem that we're facing. And that's the problem of us being willing. And when I say us, I mean people on the left in general, putting a identity only paradigm forward, where we are intentionally suffocating a conversation on class, as though poverty is not the greatest identity in America, right? Like, the one thing that unites so many of us is the fact that we struggle to pay our rent. But I digress. And so let me let Sanders speak for himself, or at least I'll read as soon as I get to here it is. This is some of the comments that he said. He said, quote, "Let me respond to the question in a way that you may not be happy with. It goes without saying that as we fight to end all forms of discrimination, as we fight to bring more and more women into the political process, Latinos, African Americans, Native Americans, all of that is enormously important. And count me in as somebody who wants to see that happen. But it is not good enough for someone to say, hey, I'm a Latina, vote for me. That is not good enough. I have to know whether that Latina is going to stand up with the working class of this country and is going to take on big money interest." He continued, he said, "One of the struggles that we're going to have right now, we lay on the table of the Democratic Party. It's not good enough to me to say, okay, well, we've got X number of African Americans over here. We've got Y number of Latinos. We have Z number of women. We are a diverse party and a diverse nation. Not good enough. We need that diversity that goes without saying. That is accepted. Right now, we've made some progress in getting women into politics. I think we got 20 women in the Senate right now, and we need 50 women in the Senate. We need more African Americans." He continues. But, and I'm giving you all of it in context because many media outlets have not. They have given you sound bites. This is the rest of the context. But here's my point, Sanders said. And this is where we're going to be division. There's going to be division within the Democratic Party. It is not good enough for someone to say, I am a woman, vote for me. No, that's not good enough. What we need is a woman who has the guts to stand up to Wall Street, to the insurance companies, to the drug companies, and to the fossil fuel industry. In other words, one of the struggles that you're going to be seeing in the Democratic Party is whether we go beyond identity politics. I think it's a step forward in America if you have an African American head or CEO of some major corporation. But you know what? If that guy is going to be shipping jobs out of this country and exploiting his workers, doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot if he's black, white, or Latino. You're damn right, Bernie Sanders. Now, people have jumped and basically swear that Bernie Sanders is a secret member of the Klan, right? Of course, I'm being hyperbolic, but this is where they cannot receive this message because, one, I think they can't receive it because it's coming from a white man, an old white Jewish man, right? They can't receive it. And I swear, if a black populace would ever rise from the ranks and use the power of identity politics, we could destroy this identity-only politics narrative. But because it's coming from an old white man, it's completely rejected on every level. That's number one. Number two, it's rejected because you have a class of professionals, people who make a living off of telling us that identity is the only thing that matters. Because their identity, apparently, maybe that's what got them their job. I don't know, right? But they have made a professional career out of silencing the conversation on class and pandering on the conversation of race and gender and other identities. And when you have the bulk of your voices in mainstream media pounding that narrative, suffocating the conversation on class, you are going to get a populace that is has just as much vitriol towards this message as you see today. You have people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck, rejecting this idea that we should not only look for a particular identity and put that identity as the head of a corporation, when that corporation and the activities that that particular identity CEO is doing is detrimental to them. In other words, you have people who are just hunky-dory happy that a woman is the CEO of Walmart, for example, but Walmart is not paying living wages. This is what Adolph Reed and Noam Chomsky's daughter, forgive me, I don't remember her first name. This is what they coined the phrase neoliberal multiculturalism, right? It's this idea that we want a top 1%. We're totally fine with a top 1%, so long as that top 1% has a certain percentage of African Americans, certain percentage of LGBTQ, certain percentage of women, and it's reflective of how diverse our society is. Never mind that the 1% is plundering the rest of America. So long as that 1% can be diverse, we're okay with it. That's not how intersectionality works. Because if you are ignoring the greatest intersection that connects us all, which is class, then you are erasing an identity for your own personal benefit. And I don't know how many times we can have this conversation, right? How many times we have to come this conversation? Sanders literally said we need to do both. Well, he didn't literally say it, but you get what I'm saying. He's saying in this message that we need to focus on both. Identity matters because identity is directly under attack from Republicans and from these neo-Nazis who want their identity to be the sole identity. So yes, your race, your gender, your orientation, all of that matters. All of that 100% matters, but that cannot be the only thing that matters. And the reason I know you know this is because if all that mattered was race, then Ben Carson, you would be 100% okay with Ben Carson being the Secretary of damn Education. Why are you not okay with Ben Carson being the Secretary of Education? He's black, so black people should champion him, right? No. If you were 100% okay with identity being the only thing that mattered, then Sarah Palin should be the Secretary of Commerce. Are you okay with that? Because here, I mean, she's a woman. Let's give her a hand. Let's make her the Secretary of the Treasury. If you have qualms and issues with the fact that Ben Carson could potentially be, he's not, but he could potentially be the Secretary of Education, and you're not celebrating the mere fact that he's black, then you are capable of doing both and. But you conveniently stop that nuanced approach when we include the conversation about class. Because this is the last category, right? I said, I forgot the other ones I listed, but here's the last category. They don't want to have the conversation about class because it necessarily involves a conversation about tax policy, which necessarily conflicts with the amount of money that they can take home, their disposable income. Let's just be real. I mean, when you make $200,000 a year to write crappy articles, you are interested in getting the lowest tax rate you possibly can. Jamel Bowie said about as much during the primaries when we were talking about state education being free. Bernie Sanders was proposing this. He put up the argument that what about all the people whose careers are dependent on those tuitions, right? And the pain that they're going to suffer, right? So it's a clear conflict of interest with the professional class. Me, let's be real. right? I'm going to save a lot of money with Donald Trump. And you have people who've made a conscious decision to not discuss class because they know damn well for us to address the issue of class, we have to talk about tax policy. And we have to have a far more progressive tax code than what we have, which means that if you're making over $150,000 a year, you're probably going to be paying a lot more in taxes. They do not want to have that conversation. So you have those people who are looking out for their best economic interests, who are going to always use their platform to the detriment of the rest of us who are dependent on a class-based analysis. And you have those who are using their platforms to pimp their identity because they're the black person at the Washington Post. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Capehart. You're the black person at Washington Post. So any black story that comes across your table, oh, clearly that's your story, even though you have less in common with people like me who just got out of the working class than Bernie Sanders. I have more in common with the socialist Jew than I do the black man over at the Washington Post who probably hasn't spent now a day in a government project housing. But because he's black and he's got the right identity, he gets to be the spokesperson. Both and. Simple as that. Dr. King, they didn't kill him when he was talking about race, right? You would think if they were going to kill him, they were going to kill him when he was trying to segregate the lunch counter. You know when they killed him? When he started unifying poor people, poor white people, poor black people. He started his poor person's campaign. He started unifying them around a message that he said, it quote, as best as my ability, I'm going to quote it, it didn't cost the government a dime to desegregate the lunch counter. But you cannot address the issues that we're facing now without a massive redistribution of wealth and power. Shortly thereafter, he was killed. It must be both and. And anyone who's saying otherwise either has they have a vested interest to do so, or they have been manipulated by those who have a vested interest to do so.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.